So hi guys, I'm back again and I am Sherlyn and Sualog, and for today's video we'll talk about Frisbee, particularly on their rules. But first, before we will proceed to our main topic, let us know what Frisbee means is. So the Frisbee is a plastic flying disc that has been enjoyed as a recreational toy for people of all ages, whether in the backyard, at the park, or on the beach. They are typically used as a game of catch, with the frisbee spinning through the air when thrown. So, ang frisbee is a sport or a recreational activity na ginagamit or na ginagamitan ng parang pinggan na disc. Parang siyang pinggan pero hindi siya pinggan. Kasi ano siya, circular, bilog siya na disc na flat with some curves. And wait lang, I will give you an example. So, ganito po yung disc. Ganyan. So, ganito yung ginagamit pag naglalaro ng frisbee disc. 1968, when Joel Silver introduced his idea of ultimate frisbee to the Columbia High School Student Council in Maplewood, New Jersey, USA. The next year, the first game was played between two groups of students. So, yon. Si Joel Silver talaga nag-introduce ng idea na magkakaroon ng ultimate frisbee na nilalaro na ngayon as a sport. So, yon. And the now popular pastime of tossing the disc remained in obscurity until the invention of a plastic flying disc by Fred Morrison in 1948, which was much more durable and flight-worthy than anything made of wood or metal. Kasi nga, yung dati, wood or metal ang ginagamit nila, and mabigat yun, di ba? Syempre naman, pag itatapon mo, mabigat yun. And, nag-invent si Fred Morrison, siya nag-invent ng frisbee disc na ginagamit natin ngayon. So, yun, and yun lang yung brief history na i-share ko sa inyo ngayon. So, for now, let's proceed to the rules of the frisbee because that is our main topic. So, a brief introduction also before we'll start to the rules of the frisbee. Ultimate is a 7-a-side team sport played with a flying disc. So, yun sabi ko kanina. It is played on a rectangular field about half the width of a football field, with an end zone at each end. The objective of each team is to score a goal by having a player catch a pass in the end zone that they are attacking. A thrower may not run with the disc, but may pass the disc in any direction to any teammate. So any time a pass is incomplete, a turnover occurs, and the other team shall take position and attempt to score in the opposite end zone. Games are typically played to 15 goals or around 100 minutes. Ultimate is self-officiated and non-contact. The spirit of the game guides how players officiate the game and conduct themselves on the field. So, ganon, paano ang ultimate frisbee i-play yung sa sports na talaga. So, many of these rules are general in nature and cover most situations. However, some rules cover specific situations and override the general case without verification from their nearest opposition player, or is moving immediately prior to the check, or was not in the appropriate position. After this violation call, any pass does not count regardless of whether it is complete or incomplete, and position reverts back to the thrower unless 16.3 applies. Next, we have the out of bounds. The entire playing field is in bounds. The perimeter lines are not part of the playing field and are out of bounds. All non-players are part of the out of bounds area. The out of bounds area consists of the ground which is not in bounds and everything in contact with, except for defensive players who are always considered in bounds. An offensive player who is not out of bounds is in bounds. An airborne player retains their in-bounds, out-of-bounds status until the player contacts the playing field or the out-of-bounds area. A player who has caught the disc who contacts the playing field and then contacts an out-of-bounds area is still considered inbounds as long as they maintain the catch until they establish position. If they leave the playing field, they must establish a pivot point at the location in the playing field where they cross the perimeter line. A thrower who contacts an out-of-bounds area is considered inbounds until they make a pass. Contact between players does not confer the state of being in or out of bounds from one to another. The following are out-of-bounds turnovers and no catch is deemed to have occurred. Any part of an offensive receiver is out of bounds when they contact the disc or after catching the disc while airborne. An offensive receiver's first contact is out of bounds while still in contact with the disc. A disc is in bounds once play is live or when play starts or restarts. A disc becomes out of bounds when it first contacts the out of bounds area or contacts an out of bounds offensive player. The disc may fly outside the perimeter line and return to the playing field, and players may go out of bounds to make a play on the disc. The place where a disc went out of bounds is the location where prior to contacting an out of bounds area or player, the disc was most recently, partly or wholly over the playing field or contacted by an in-bounds player. If the disc is out of bounds and more than 3 meters from the pivot location, non-players may retrieve the disc. The thrower must carry the disc the last 3 meters to the playing field. Next, the receivers and positioning. A catch occurs when a player has a non-spinning disc strapped between at least 2 body parts. A catch can enable a player to establish position of the disc. If the player fails to maintain the catch due to subsequent ground contact related to the catch or contact related to the catch with a teammate or legitimately opposition player, position is deemed to have not occurred. After establishing position, that player becomes the thrower. If offensive and defensive player catch the disc simultaneously, the offense retains position. A player in an established position is entitled to remain in that position and must not be contacted by an opposing player. Every player is entitled to occupy any position on the field not occupied by any opposing player, provided that they not initiate contact in taking such a position and are not moving in a reckless or dangerously aggressive manner. However, when the disc is in the air, a player may not move in a manner solely to prevent an opponent from taking an unoccupied pass to make a play on the disc. So, all players must attempt to avoid contact with other players, and there is no situation where a player may justify initiating contact. The player who initiates contact is deemed to be the player who arrived at the point of contact after the opponent had already established a legitimate position at that point, adjusted their movements a way that created an avoidable contact with an opponent moving in a legal manner. Some minor contact may occur as 2 or more players move towards a single point simultaneously. Minor contact should be minimized but is not considered a foul. Players may not use their arms or legs to obstruct the movement of opposing player. No player may physically assist the movement of another player nor use an item of equipment or object to assist in contacting the disc. Next, turnovers. A turnover that transfers position of the disc from one team to the other occurs when the disc contacts the ground while it is not in the position of an offensive player. However, it is not down if a receiver catches a pass before the disc contacts the ground and maintains the catch while the disc is in contact with the ground. A defensive player establishes position of a pass. An interception. The disc becomes out of bounds during the pull. The offense touches the disc before it hits the ground and subsequently fails to establish position. A turnover that transfers position of the disc from one team to the other and results in a stoppage of play occurs when there is an accepted offensive receiving foul. The thrower has not released the disc before the marker first starts to say the word 10 in the stall count. The disc is intentionally transferred from one offensive player to another without ever being completely untouched by both players. The thrower intentionally reflects a pass to themselves of another player. In attempting a pass, the thrower catches the disc after release prior to the disc being contacted by another player. An offensive player intentionally assists a teammate's movement to catch pass, or an offensive player uses an item of equipment or object to assist in catching a pass. If a player determines a turnover has occurred, they must make the appropriate call immediately. If the opposition disagrees, they may call contest, and play must stop. After a stall-out call, if the thrower still has possession of the disc but they believe fast count occurred in such a manner that they did not have a reasonable opportunity to call fast count before a stall-out, the play is treated as either an accepted defensive breach or a contested stall-out. If the thrower made a completed pass, the thrower can contest if they believe it was not a stall-out. Any offensive player take possession of the disc after a turnover except an interception turnover after an offensive receiving foul. If the player in position after a turnover or after a pull that has already hit the ground intentionally drops the disc, places the disc on the ground, or transfers position of the disc, they must re-establish position and restart play with a check. After a turnover, the turnover location where the disc is to stop or peek by offensive player, intercepting players. Thrower located in the case of thrower was located at the time of the call. The offensive player was located in the case the accepted offensive receiving foul occurred. If the turnover location is outbounds or the disc touched an out of bounds their area after the turnover occurred, the thrower must establish a pivot point at the location on the central zone nearest to where the disc went out of bounds. If the turnover location in the central zone, the thrower must establish a pivot point at the location. If the turnover location in the offense attacking end zone, the thrower must establish pivot point at the nearest location at the goal line. If the turnover location in the offense defending end zone, the thrower may choose where to establish a pivot point. If after an accepted turnover, play has continued at knowingly, play stops and the disc is returned to the turnover location. Next is scoring. A goal is scored if an inbounds player catches a legal pass and all their ground contacts are entirely within their attacking end zone, or for an airborne player, all of their first simultaneous points of ground contact after catching the disc are entirely within their attacking end zone. They subsequently establish position of the disc and maintain the catch throughout all ground contact related to the catch. If a player believes a goal has been scored, they may call goal and play stops. After a contested or retracted goal call, play must restart with a check and the call is deemed to have been made when the player establishes position. If a player in position of the disc ends up with their selected pivot point behind the attacking goal line without scoring a goal according to 14.1, the player must establish a pivot point at the nearest location on the goal line. The time at which a goal is deemed to have been scored is when the player establishes position. Calling fouls, infractions, and violations. A breach of the rules due to non-minor contact between two or more opposing players is a foul. If a player intentionally initiating minor contact is still a breach of the rules. A breach of the rules regarding a marking or travel. Every other breach of the rules is a violation. Player fouled may claim a foul by calling foul and claim an infraction by calling the specific name of the infraction. Any opposing player may claim a violation by calling the specific name of the violation or violation. When a foul or violation call is made that stops play, players must stop play by visibly or audibly communicating the stoppage as soon as they are aware of the call, and all players should echo calls on the field. Calls must be immediately after the breach is recognized, after a player initiates stoppage incorrectly, including after mishearing a call, not knowing the rules, or not making the call immediately. Gains or retains position, does not gain or retain position, against whom the foul, infraction, or violation, or contest. If a player making call subsequently determines that their call was incorrect, they can retract the calling by retracted. Multiple breaches occur, the same determines that was incorrect, they can retract the call by calling retracted. If multiple breaches occur on the same play or before play stops, the outcome should be resolved in reverse sequence. Players are encouraged to use the WFDF hand signals to communicate all calls. Next, continuation after a call. Whenever a foul or violation call is made or a player attempts to stop play in any way, play stops immediately and no turnover is possible. If a foul or violation called against the thrower and the thrower attempts a pass called by the thrower during the act of throwing, or called or occurs when the disc is in the air, then play continues until position has been established. Once position has been established, the team that called the foul or violation gains or retains position as a result of the pass. The play can continue without stoppage if the player who made the foul or violation call makes a play on. If the team that called the foul or violation does not gain or retain position as a result of the pass, play must be stopped. If the team that called the foul or violation believes that position has been affected by the foul or violation, the disc will be returned to the thrower for a check unless the specific rule says otherwise. Regardless of when any calls is made, if the players involved from both teams are agreed that the event or call did not affect the outcome, the play stands. This rule is not superseded by any other rule. Next, fouls. Dangerous play. Action demonstrating reckless disregard for the safety of fellow players or posing significant risk of injury to fellow players or other dangerously aggressive behaviors are considered dangerous play and must be treated as a foul. Receiving fouls. A receiving foul occurs when a player initiates non-minor contact with an opponent before, a while, or directly after. Strip fouls. A strip foul occurs when an opponent fouls a player and that causes the player to drop a disc. Blocking fouls occurs when a player takes a position that an opponent moving in legal manner will be unable to avoid, taking into account the opponent's expected position based on their established speed and direction, and non-minor contact results. Forced out fouls. A forced out foul occurs when the receiver is in the process of establishing position of the disc and is fouled by a defensive player before establishing position, to become out of bounds instead of inbounds, or to catch the disc in the central zone instead of their attacking end zone. If the receiver would have caught the disc in their attacking end zone, it is a goal. If the forced out foul is contested, the disc returned to the thrower if the receiver became out of bounds. Otherwise, the disc stays with the receiver. Defensive throwing or marking fouls. A defensive throwing foul occurs when illegally positioned and there is non-minor contact between the illegally positioned defensive player and the thrower, or initiate non-minor contact with the thrower, or there is non-minor contact resulting from the thrower and the defender, both vying for the same unoccupied position prior to release. Of course, prior to the thrower releasing the disc and not during the throwing motion. Offensive throwing or thrower foul occurs when the thrower is solely responsible for initiating non-minor contact with the defensive player. Occurring during the thrower's follow-through is not a sufficient basis for a foul, should be avoided. Next, offsetting fouls. If accepted fouls are called by offensive and defensive players on the same play, these are offsetting fouls. If there is non-minor contact that is caused by two or more opposing players moving towards a single point simultaneously, this must be treated as offsetting fouls. However, if this occurs after the disc has been caused or after the relevant players involved can no longer make a play on the disc, this must be treated as indirect foul. Infractions and next we have the infractions and violations. Marking infractions include the following: fast count, start or continues or count illegally, does not start or restart, the stall count or stalling, counts in less than 1 second intervals, does not correctly reduce or reset the stall count when required, or does not start the stall count from the correct number. Straddle, a line between a defensive player's feet comes within one disc. This space in any part of a defensive player is less than 1 disc diameter away from the torso of the thrower. Wrapping, a line between a defensive player's hands or arms comes within 1 disc diameter of the thrower's torso. Double team, a defensive player other than the marker is within 3 meters or the thrower's pivot point without also guarding another offensive player. Vision, a defensive player uses any part of their body to intentionally obstruct the thrower's vision. A marking infraction may be contested by the defense, in which case play stops. If a pass has been completed, a contested or retracted marking infraction must be treated as a violation. After all marking infractions listed that are not contested, the marker must resume the stall count, with the number last fully uttered before the call -1. Then, instead of calling a marking infraction, the thrower may call a marking violation and stop play if the stall count is not corrected, or there is no stall count or egregious marking infraction, or there is a pattern of repeated marking infractions. If a marking infraction or marking violation is called, then the thrower also attempts pass before, during, or after the call has no consequences. And if the pass is incomplete, then the turnover stands. Travel infractions. The thrower may attempt a pass at any time as long as they're entirely inbounds or have established an inbound pivot point. After catching the disc, the thrower must reduce speed as quickly as possible without changing direction until they have established a pivot point. The thrower may move in any direction. A travel infraction occurs kapag establishes a pivot point or wala an incorrect location, releases pass and breach. Thrower must move specified location. Peak violation. A defensive player is guarding one offensive player and they are prevented from moving towards with that player by another player. That defensive player may call peak. However, it is not a peak if both the player being guarded and the obstructing player are making a play on the disc. Next, safety stoppages. Injury stoppage. An injury stoppage or injury may be called by the injured player or by any player on the injured player's team. If the injury was not caused by an opponent, the player must choose either to be substituted. If injury caused by the opponent, the player may choose to stay to be substituted. Established position of the disc and the player has dropped the disc due to injury, the player retains position of the disc. Considered have the called at the time injury unless the injured player chooses to continue play before the stoppage is called. Technical stoppage. Any player who recognizes a condition that endangers players, including if a player has an open or bleeding wound, should call a technical stoppage. A teammate, coach, or designated official should actively alert players to any condition that endangers players. A player who has an issue regarding an open or bleeding wound has 70 seconds to effectively address the issue. The thrower may call a technical stoppage during play to replace a severely damaged disc. After technical stoppage, calling while the disc is in the air or if play has continued unknowingly. Last is the timeouts. The player calling a timeout must form a T with their hands or with one hand and the disc. Should call timeout to opposition player. After the start of a point and before both teams have signaled readiness, a player from either team may call timeout. The timeout extends the time the start of the point subsequent pull by 75 seconds. After the pull, only a thrower with position of the disc may call a timeout. The timeout starts when T is formed and lasts 75 seconds. Substitutions are not allowed except for injury. Play is restarted at the pivot location. The thrower must remain the same. All the offensive players must establish stationary position at any location. Once the offensive players have selected positions, defensive player must then establish a stationary position at any location. The stall counter starts a maximum 9. However, if the marker has been switched, the stall counter starts at stalling 1. If the thrower attempts to call timeout while play is live or leave, and when their team is no remaining timeouts, play is stopped, the marker must add 2 seconds to the stall count they would have restarted play on before restarting play with a check. If this results in a stall count of 10 or above, this is called stall out turnover. So that's it. That is all about the rules of the Frisbee ultimate Frisbee sport game. Hope you learned a lot from me, guys, and hope to see you soon. God bless and keep safe.